From the Sun Sentinel, this NBA season is like no other, so therefore an asterisk. Shaq says scrap NBA season without an, quote, asterisk champ. Retired four-time NBA champion Shaquille O'Neal says the league would be smart to call off the halted 2019-20 campaign and avoid crowning a champion that would carry an, quote, asterisk. Welcome back, everybody. My name is Tucker, and in today's video, we're going to be talking about one of the very, very few things that actually really gets under my skin and irritates me in these different sports arguments that people have, and that is the idea of an NBA champion, a sports champion in general, a title having an asterisk on it. And in most specifically today, it's going to be talking about how the NBA season and postseason this year is obviously going to be much different, and this idea that people are throwing around that this title simply just won't count compared to other titles throughout NBA history. So I've got a lot of thoughts on this one. I've got my recording volume a little bit further down on my microphone because it's going to get a little bit more heated than some of my videos typically do. So this is kind of a return to the rants that I used to do on this channel a little while back. But yeah, with that said, let's go ahead and jump into it. But before we do, if you enjoy the NBA, then consider subscribing. I upload basically every single day. Okay, so as I said, this is one of the very few things that actually really gets on my nerves in different sports arguments that are had. Is just this idea that there are certain champions throughout sports history that did not deserve to win the title that they won. And with the NBA specifically, generally this argument is reserved for teams that won a title within a lockout season, teams that won a title in which the team that they faced either in the finals or the conference finals and defeated were only defeated because of injury issues that they may have had. Or in this case, obviously the NBA postseason format is going to be at the very least a little bit different and potentially a lot different than it typically would be in a given postseason format. So it's going to either be some kind of play-in tournament where you've got, the seeds fighting for the last spot in the Western Conference, or potential like group stage thing like you would with the World Cup. It's not going to be your typical win 4 best of 7 series, win 16 games, and you're the NBA champion, right? So those are kind of the different scenarios in which people like to put an asterisk on a championship. And let's go back to some of those other situations first, and then we'll get to kind of the more ranty subject matter, which is this current postseason. So this idea of an asterisk in the past, again, goes to either the lockout shortened seasons typically, or seasons like last year in which the Raptors defeated the Warriors despite the Warriors losing multiple key players due to injury in the finals. And I feel like even like those seasons are more quote unquote asterisk worthy than what we're going to talk about for this postseason. But even then, like, you still have to go out and win the game. You still have to play basketball. It's still 5-on-5. Everybody still needs to score more points than the other team. And yes, there are certainly teams that, have bad injury luck, and they don't maybe get as fair a shot at the title as they would have, and their overall roster is more talented than maybe, the team that ended up winning the title. But that happens in every single season. That's my biggest issue with this asterisk thing is we point out flaws in a team's title case, I guess, even though they won the basketball games they needed to win. We point out flaws in a team winning a title. Like, for example, I think it was 2016 when the Warriors won, and 2015, when the Warriors won, it was Kevin Love and Kyrie Irving were hurt, and so it was just LeBron. The Warriors won the title. Oh, they didn't really earn that one. What would have happened if Kyrie and Kevin Love were healthy? Same thing with last year when key players continued to go down for the Warriors. The Raptors won the title. Lockout shortened seasons, things like that. That stuff happens all throughout the season. If you really want to go back and say, well, if this guy didn't get hurt, if this guy didn't get hurt, all kinds of different standings would have been different. If you go back and look at, different years in which teams lost in the conference finals or in the second round or in the finals, and you could say, well, the seeding would have been different. They would have had home court. They wouldn't have had home court. If you just go back and look and say, if this wing didn't get hurt, maybe they're the 2 seed instead of the 4, and they have home court in this series. And that's my biggest issue with the asterisk thing, is either you're all working under the same circumstances, which is the lockout shortened thing and the postseason format we're going to get to a little bit later, or you're playing the injury game, but you're playing it so selectively that the argument that you're making makes absolutely zero sense. Like, yes, you could say that if the Warriors were fully healthy, they might have won the championship and the Raptors wouldn't have won. That's probably an argument that you could make, right? But you could also make that same argument about, well, maybe the Raptors don't get to where they do if there's certain injury issues that don't go down in the Eastern Conference, or this shot goes down or this one doesn't. Like, if you really want to go through and start being selective about how you view things historically, then go back and think, okay, well, what if Kawhi doesn't make that shot in Game 7 against the Sixers? Well, what happens then when they go to overtime and things like that? Like, you can't be that selective with this specific injury thing and suddenly say, oh, this title doesn't count. The Raptors, the teams during the lockout seasons, the Warriors, the Cavs, all these champions, they won the basketball games that they needed to win. They made the plays that they needed to against the players that they were playing against, which they had no control over whatsoever who they're playing, and they did what they needed to do to win the title, and the other teams didn't. It's as simple as that. There's 0 asterisk seasons in NBA history for me personally. Now let's move on to specifically what's going on with this postseason format. So the argument that people are making here is that the champion for this season, if they do end up running the postseason and crowning an NBA champion, will not be a worthy one, or at least not as worthy as past NBA champions. And at first, that seems like a solid argument, right? Because you're talking about a situation that is certainly not ideal, a situation that is certainly very different, and how different teams and different players respond to that, it's going to be interesting to see, and it could be more detrimental to certain teams than others, right? And when you're comparing it specifically to past seasons in which everything is normal, you're just playing 4 best-of-7s and then you crown a champion, okay, maybe you could make an argument that it's less worthy of a title this season, whoever ends up winning it. Here's my thing, though. We're all still playing basketball games, right? Like, I understand that maybe the advantage of home court isn't there for those higher seeds, right? So, like, for the Lakers and for the Bucks, they earned that number 1 seed for the regular season, and if you just do the 1 versus 8, the 2 through 7, whatever the regular playoff format in Disney with no fans, that advantage isn't quite there at the same level. That's absolutely true. But here's the thing. If you won all those games in the regular season, then assumedly you were the better team, so you should win those games anyway, whether Mickey Mouse is in the stands or whether 20,000 people in LA are in the stands, right? Like that, it shouldn't make any difference in your ability to score points and defend and block shots and pass the basketball, right? Like, it shouldn't make any difference whatsoever. I think we like to make it seem like it does, and maybe during certain runs and there's momentum and there's different things that, you kind of feed into the energy of that crowd one way or the other as the road team or the home team. But ultimately, it really shouldn't have an impact on your ability to win the basketball game, right? The only way that this argument makes sense to me personally is if you want to say that, let's just say we get to the conference finals, right? And it's the Bucks and whoever, and Giannis or Chris Middleton, or on the other side, it's the Lakers and somebody, and LeBron or Anthony Davis, one of them comes down with an illness, right? And they have to be quarantined and they can't play. Then we can have, that would be the only time that I would reserve the right to say, hey, okay, maybe we should talk about an asterisk season here, because like that is just such a wild thing to have happen to a player in this scenario, and they tried to do the whole bubble thing and it didn't work out. And that's not 100% the same to the whole injury thing. But even then, I still don't think that it would have an asterisk on it. You still have to go out, you still have to win the basketball game, you still have to play. So that's my biggest issue with this thing, is like we're just trying to already come up with ways to make this less significant of a thing if the NBA does return. And I'm on the side of, I just want basketball. Like, I don't care. You could say it's got 15 different asterisks on it and you're only playing with, the last 8 people in the rotation and the top 7 guys all aren't playing. And I would still say, I don't care. Just play the games. Like, as long as you can do it safely, I just want basketball back. And I just feel like already people were trying to tear this down and make it seem like it's something that isn't going to matter as much or isn't, as impactful in NBA history. Like, just enjoy the games, enjoy the fact that the games will be back. And if you're one of the teams that are in the playoffs and you end up making a run and you win the title, you get to the finals, you get to the conference finals, and it's different than maybe you would have thought the outcome would be, don't start blaming it on the different format and on the fact that they're not playing in front of home crowds. Like, if, for example, the Lakers go out and they don't make it to the conference finals, and the Clippers and somebody else end up making a run, and they're in the conference finals, I know that there are going to be some people that are going to say, well, if this was a regular playoff format, the Lakers would have made the conference finals. Well, you know what else would have helped? If this guy had knocked down a shot, or if this guy had played better defense, or if there was a proper rotation on this defensive possession. Let's put the focus more on the gameplay rather than the circumstances around it, assuming that we actually have a postseason. I don't care who's in the crowd or who isn't in the crowd. Let's focus on these guys' ability to, play basketball, to play better than the other team, to play well as a team, and to adjust to the circumstances that they're playing under. Like, there's this idea that because the circumstances are different, that is an advantage or a disadvantage to certain teams, when really Your ability to adapt to those things is part of what makes a great team. And if you can't adapt to that, then you probably weren't going to adapt to anything in a regular postseason format anyway, because you might run into a team that does things a lot differently than you would have expected from game to game, and you have to adjust and adapt to that. And this is just another one of those things. At least that's the way that I think about it. And I think that this idea of an asterisk on a championship this season and any other season, quarantine or not quarantine, is just ridiculous. Let's just enjoy the basketball. Let's not worry about if there's an asterisk on it. When we crown an NBA champion, if we have one for this season, be excited that we got to witness the postseason, that we got to witness the finals, and that, under these crazy circumstances, we were allowed to still have basketball, and then we have an NBA champion. And I personally am going to celebrate that champion the same way that I would any other, and it would at least be moderately different, but still no less of a title to me personally, no matter who ends up winning it. That's just kind of my stance on it, and it honestly really gets on my nerves when people try and start putting asterisks on titles. And yeah, there you have it. That is going to be the end of today's video, and I thank you all very much for watching. Once again, my name is Tucker. If you missed any of my previous videos, then be sure to check out the boxes on screen. Thanks again, and I'll see you all next time.